About 3.5 years ago, I was sitting at the dinner table. I was examining a job offer. It was a dream role, something I'd always wanted, something I'd always aspired to and worked hard to. I was supposed to be excited, but here was I, filled with fear and anxiety, because I was pregnant. See, I was born in Nigeria and raised in Nigeria as well. And as part of our culture, the male child was always preferred over the female child. The female child was relegated to a position of a wife in the kitchen and a mother. And I think some of you are nodding because you can also understand that. And at a very early age, I started to have passion for counting. I counted numbers, I counted shoes, I counted the glass, anything that was worth counting, including other people's money in the wallet. At the end of my teenage years, I had finished my first degree in accounting. But I wanted more for my life. I wanted to do more. And so here was I, applying to a few schools, and eventually got an admission in the United Kingdom to study masters. Really bad timing. My brother, who was an engineer by background, studied engineering in school, also wanted to be a pilot. Now, if you know the numbers, it's not easy to sponsor a pilot and also pay for masters at the same time. And my parents were struggling. They couldn't afford to send both of us at the same time. So here were we, me and my brother, lobbying my parents. I gave the reasons why I should be the one. My brother gave the reasons why he should be the one. And then my mother had the verdict. And she said, Addy, you should sit back. You should get married. You should stop here, have your children, and settle down. But my dad was of a different persuasion. He was willing to give his female child the same opportunity that he was given a male child, even though it meant that he needed a loan to do so. Now, for those of you that do not know, in the West is where you get a loan to buy a house and get a loan to go to school. Back in Nigeria and in Africa, you have to have your money to build your house, and you have to have the money to send the children to school. Otherwise, the children don't go to school. Then I went to do my master's and finished in financial decision management. I had a commendation award, excellent student, and it was difficult to find a job in the UK. People looked at my CV. There was so much qualification there, BSc, Masters, ACCA, and all of those things, and little practical experience. And I started to struggle to get into the financial world. My first role was as a PA, answering telephones, and I just played along. After a while, then I started getting little breaks, did a job in audit, did credit control, called people around chasing for money. Then accounts payable, started to process invoices, and on I began to build my foundation, role by role, step by step. My first real break came within the tech organization, and it was a large tech company, worldwide or widely known. And in this role, I was put in charge of 12 countries across Northwest Europe. I had 25 people reporting into me that I had to recruit from scratch. It was very daunting. I was only 26 years of age. I had a lot to learn. I had my strengths, of course. I learned very quickly. I had to seek feedback. I had to listen. I had to be collaborative. I had to expand on my roles. But there was one thing that I had to work extremely hard on, and it was my psychology. It was me believing in myself that I could do this, that I could be there and deserve to be there, to sit at the table, because there were not many people that looked like me, not many women, once you pass a managerial level at that point in time. And so fast forward to this story I was telling you about earlier in my speech. After a few roles, I applied for this particular role, a director equivalent role in another tech organization. About 4 or 5 months had passed before I heard back from anybody in that role. They gave excuses, so we were trying to shape the role. We're trying to understand what we needed for the future to make sure we got the perfect person. But there was a problem. By the time they came back and invited me for the interview, my circumstances had changed. I was probably way past my second semester. And then there was the voice inside my head that just said, just sit back again. Wait another 2 years. Don't worry about this role. And then some other thought came and said, why do I have to be the one to place a verdict on myself? And so I met with the hiring manager and I said, oh, just wanted to have some coffee. And he goes, yeah, that's okay. And we had this conversation. I said, you know the role that I applied a while ago? And he was like, yeah, you're no longer interested? I'm like, no, I'm still interested. But some things have happened. And he goes, oh, what's going on? Then I opened up and said, I'm pregnant. I'm expecting a baby. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to work for before I go away on maternity. And I think it's going to be unfair to carry on with this process. And he goes, don't worry about it. We'll work something out. Apply for it and let's go with the flow. And here was me, shaking because I was expecting the prejudice. And of course, I was speaking to a man who didn't know what it was like. And I faced none of that. So we continued with the process, and eventually I got hired into the role. I made a decision to start the role. And on my day one, I was 36 weeks pregnant. Now, I know you know how to do the math, so on the day one, I was being introduced to every one of my colleagues, and there was me with my big tummy, I only had 3 weeks to work until I had my child. And so I went away on maternity. This was my second child. My first child, I took a year off, and in the UK, that's about the average time everyone takes off work, every woman. But something about this role was compelling. Something about me couldn't sit down and be and stay for another year. So I decided to cut my maternity leave short. After about 2 months, I decided to go back to work. And guess what? I had all the criticism and all the voices. You can't do that as a woman. You shouldn't. And all the different reasons why I shouldn't. But you see, I'm not encouraging you here to do what I have done. It was right for me at that time. The timing was right. The business unit I was working for were just about to sell to another company, to Cellnex. And I knew that time was of the essence. The roles were going to be, split up, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So for me, it was compelling, and it was an internal drive that I went back to work. I had a support system. My mother came around, my husband was supportive, and my manager was amazing. So I started with a few hours a week, and gradually built it to a few days a week, until I became full-time and my daughter could go to nursery. The sale of the business unit that I worked on eventually was very successful and led into Cellnex buying over the company. Once in Cellnex, probably after about 6 months, I started to have conversations again with our CFO, the group CFO. We were just about to acquire some companies in Poland, and they were like, would you be interested to work in Poland? What did that mean? It meant that I had to move again, move my family and my children into Poland to live here about a year ago. The role in Cellnex has pushed me beyond my boundaries, not just financial, but also leading areas like ESG and quality and other areas I never, ever dreamed that I would lead. Did I get here without challenges? Of course, no. Challenges that you can imagine is facing numerous amounts of change. But then there was one big challenge, which was called rejection. It was like written all over my forehead. At the very beginning, it had a different name. It was, you were overqualified on paper, too much experience, too much qualification, and little experience. And the rejection, that was the name until I started to build up. But it changed names at some point in time and became overqualified, such that when I applied for one role a few years ago, as first CFO role that I thought that would be my role, I was headhunted into that role. I didn't apply. They came, the HR department said, your CV fits, everything around you fits. Just come and meet us. The role is yours. And so I went through lots of steps, met the powers that be. And final interview, everything went great. The mood was great, the feedback was great. And then I waited a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I was expecting the letter in the door to say you're hired. Nothing like that showed up. Eventually, I got this call from HR. And what they would tell me, said, Adi, thank you very much for the time you spent with us. We're so grateful to have had the privilege to meet you. And all of that, you're perfect, and all of the different things. However, we've made a decision. It took us a while, and we're really sorry. But having looked through your profile and met you, your personality is larger than life. You grow at such a pace that in our company, we fear that this is the maximum role. There is no other place for you, and therefore, it's going to be a no. All hopes dashed. And I sat there for like 4 days. It felt like I couldn't stand up from where I was sat after the phone call. But then, the next thing I was going to say was rejection for me. Every single time I got rejected, instead of stay down and wallow in self-pity, for me was a springboard. It spurred me to heights unknown. It gave me more strength and more confidence. Because one thing I knew was after every rejection, the next role I got, the next opportunity I got, was even better and bigger. That made me forget about my worries or what happened to me in the past. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because contrary to popular belief, that when you're in the tech world, you have to put on IVs and and wire things up, the tech world has moved beyond that. You don't have to be a programmer or an engineer to belong in the tech world. There are several roles for women, like finance I've just talked about, ESG, HR, procurement, quality, corporate social responsibility. All of these roles that are now taking the lead in decision-making of the shareholders when thinking about who to invest in. The tech world has also become an open and inclusive environment for women to work in, creating a culture of learning and constant change. I worked in various sectors, manufacturing and letting and leisure business and lots of other sectors, but nothing has been as exciting as my time within the tech sector. It's constantly changing, it's dynamic. Just when we're getting used to 5G, here comes along 6G. The innovation is beyond compare. And these innovations are creating more and more roles and more opportunities for women in tech. Cellnex particularly has created an environment to attract and retain the best talent. And I know some people are looking, what does Cellnex do? And I would explain this very quickly. I'm not sure it's working. It started from the last page, so I'm going to go back a little bit more. This is supposed to be my topic, by the way. You see the towers there? This is the Cellnex tower. Cellnex is a leading telecoms infrastructure provider across Europe. It's headquartered in Spain, but has presence in about 12 different countries here in Europe, for which Poland is one of them. We own about 100,000 of this across Europe. And mobile network operators like Play and Plus, Orange and T-Mobile put their antennas and equipment on our towers. So we enable the phones that are in your pocket or in your hands or in your handbags. Cellnex has a variety of programs for women. To encourage women in leadership is the Accelerated Development Program, ADP Women for Women. And this program helps women, their managers, and mentors around how to actually develop the woman in the workplace. As you know, women face a lot of self-doubt, lots of emotional topics as well, and this ADP program works on every area of the woman to make them fully rounded to be able to take on challenges in the workplace and leadership positions. The second thing is about the Inclusive Leadership Program. And this program is available for every single person. The Inclusive Leadership Program helps us to create opportunities for every single person. It helps open our minds beyond the unconscious bias to make sure that we create a diverse and inclusive culture for women. I will not have finished without talking about the ESG profile from a Cellnex perspective. About 1 in 4 of management positions in Cellnex are held by women, with this figure growing more as we go along. 1 in 2 hires last year were women, and about 1 in 2 managerial positions or director-level positions were also women, with these roles also growing, or these figures growing within the next few years. What am I saying? Remember the story about my mother? She's not a bad woman. She's actually my greatest cheerleader, my rock. However, I realized that inherent in her spirit, she inherited a lineage of a limit being placed on a woman. And I don't know how many people are under the sound of my voice today that have inherited the same thing, where you think a woman should be restricted to the kitchen or stopped by maternity or some other external forces. I would like to charge you, if you're in this room and listening to my voice, and you have a girl around you, you're a mother, you have a friend, you have a niece, let this inequality, let this stereotype stop with our generation. Imagine a world where these kind of speeches don't have to happen anymore. Or a woman doesn't have to be afraid to tell a recruiting manager that they're pregnant for fear of prejudice or being sidetracked. Some people just won't tell you, they just would find an excuse to not hire you. Imagine a world where we were all equals and women were born as well. I heard the men leaders are born, but women leaders are made, because the first things we have to get through is the psychology of this limit, this door that is already shut in our face even before the world begins. I would like to charge you. You don't need to take the extraordinary steps that I've taken, move your family and move the different things. But I want to charge you to keep moving forward in your life. Take 1 step at a time. Take the challenges in front of you. Take the risks. Learn a new language. Go to a new school. Do whatever it is that keeps you moving forward. And do not let anything stop you. Not the war, not a woman, not yourself. Thank you.